13 years after its initial debut, a Sonic Generations remaster is rapidly approaching our position, and Shadow's coming along for the ride with his own story campaign that dives into his tragic past and goes up against his old nemesis, Black Doom. Since we've still got a long ways to go before this collection drops later this fall, I thought it'd be a good idea to share 10 things that both these games need to do to be the ultimate experience. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Whether it's issues present in the original generations that could stand to be updated or fixed, or features that just need to be in Shadow's campaign, period. Let's get started with number 1, the game being good. Oh, I can't believe I'm starting the video off like this, but can you blame me or anyone else for that matter? Because Shun Nakamura, the director of Sonic Forces, is attached to the project, and we all know how that game turned out. Though I will give him points for just how well Shadow was handled in the game, as well as the art style. But then you've got Color's Ultimate to blame for the war flashbacks people had with a very severe switch bug that took months to fix. But that was on Blind Squirrel, the devs behind the remaster. This time, Sonic Team's handling it themselves, so we shouldn't have anything to worry about. And number 2 is basic quality of life improvements. You know the drill. Basic improvements alongside new features not present in the originals come with the territory of remasters. Sometimes they're kinda small, and other times they majorly improve the overall flow of the game, Spyro Reignited being my favorite example of this. With Sparks' gem detector and fast travel available at all times across all 3 games. In terms of the base generations, I'm mainly talking about menu features for this point, that being save slots and custom control schemes. Let's start with the save slots because starting with the PS3, Xbox 360, and the Wii era, Sonic games were just one of the few series that stopped having multiple save slots. Unleashed on the PS2 had them, but the next-gen versions didn't. And so did 06, Colors, Forces, and Generations. Therefore, if you want to play through the story mode again, you'll have to either erase your entire save file and wiping out all your high scores, best times, and collectibles, or you'll have to resort to creating another profile and play the game that way. Frontiers, on the other hand, fixed this by giving the player up to 3 manual save files. And once I seen this, I was like, oh, thank goodness. So I'm hoping both the Generations Remaster and Shadow Generations also include this, cause I can see myself playing through both these games multiple times. Then there's custom controls, which I actually touched upon in the previous Generations video, and how it'll be difficult to go back to Generations after putting in a ridiculous amount of hours into Frontiers. In short, if Color's Ultimate can do this no problem, then it shouldn't be a problem here. And number 3 is drifting in Shadow's campaign. Now I know we haven't seen much of Shadow's campaign yet, but something I feel the series has been desperately missing since Forces is the iconic drift mechanic first introduced in Sonic Unleashed. I don't know about you, but there's something satisfying about drifting around corners in a Sonic game, especially Unleashed. Lost World was the first mainline game since Unleashed to not have it, but it was understandable because of the impressive parkour mechanics. Forces technically had it, but they were automatically triggered in the custom character and tag team stages, offering very little control over it. And Frontiers did not have it, except for one tiny cyberspace stage, and it's the worst one in the game. 3-5. This ain't it, Chief. Yes, the level design was ripped from Unleashed, Savannah Citadel Day Act 2 to be specific, which relied heavily on the drift mechanic or else you'll fall off. I never did this stage legit, but I'm way more likely to do so than the Frontiers version due to how much more slippery and loose the drift is. Looking through comments and such, I've found that more people actually hate this stage more than actually enjoying it, with most people, myself included, just jumping over the drift pads. Heck, there's even a mod that makes the drift so much better. That's how bad it was. All I'm gonna say is if they bring it back for Shadow Generations, for the love of consistency, just use the one in the base Generations. It's tied with Unleashed for the best drift in the boost formula. Just don't pull another 3-5. Sonic Team, I beg of you. At number 4 is multiple music remixes. In case you're unfamiliar, Generations has the option to switch out music in any given stage. So instead of listening to Open Your Heart during the Perfect Chaos fight, you can swap it out with Night of the Wind from Sonic and the Black Knight, or any other track you unlock, no matter how unfitting it is. This is so stupid, I love it. I technically touched upon this in the previous Generations video, but that was more about including tracks from later games like Lost World and Frontiers. What I'm talking about here is the option to choose between different remixes of a given song. For example, you could listen to the default versions of Escape from the City, or you can switch to the classic version from Adventure 2. Chances are Endless Possibility is possibly getting a brand new remix by the same band behind the original, so having the option to choose between the two would be wonderful. Or, as I've already mentioned, Open Your Heart. You could choose between the mix already in Generations, the original Adventure 1 mix, or they can include some of the remixes by Nate Wants to Battle, which, in my opinion, is the best version of the song. Same goes for His World. Since songs unlock after completing challenge gates and collecting red star rings, I'd imagine the remixes, for the sake of adding a ton of extra challenges, would all be attached to one version of the song. Simply grab one and you've got all of them, leaving room for music from more recent games to be found. Seeing as most remasters, including Spyro Reignited and Sonic Colors Ultimate, both have the option to switch to different versions of its soundtrack, though I don't see this happening for Shadow's campaign, I would love to be proven wrong. And everyone gets yet another remix of Supporting Me. At number 5 is Team Dark. Now, this one definitely deserves some clarification, cause it partially deals with respecting Shadow's history in the series. Whether it's the characterization, which I already covered a great deal in the previous Generations video, with Ian Flynn seemingly handling the story, or the representation of the games that Shadow's been a main part of before Generations' original release, and cleaning up some bits of the story in the process. There's also the stage and boss aspect, which they seem to be doing a good job with so far, but then there's an aspect I didn't cover in that initial video, and that's Team Dark. It's turned into a major discussion over the past couple of years because Sega doesn't actually consider it a thing anymore, despite these characters regularly appearing and working together. Whether it's the IDW Comics, Sonic Forces, or Sonic 06, to me, they've always been a team, regardless of what Sega says. That said, I do hope Rouge and E123 appear in Shadow's campaign. A, because it crosses over with the main Generations where Rouge does appear, while E123 only appears in the hidden trophy room. So this campaign sounds like the perfect excuse to bring the crew back together. And B, if it's just Shadow and Black Doom the whole time, with Sonic popping in for a bit, it could be missing some potential if at least some of the characters from the base Generations do not appear. Considering most of them, like the Chaotix, do appear in Shadow's game when Black Doom first arrived on the scene, simply having them present for Shadow to interact with and equally be shocked to see Black Doom's return would just be nice. And it better include Blaze. Fun fact, Sonic Rush and Shadow the Hedgehog both released on the same day 19 years ago, so if you didn't feel old already, then I bet you do now.
We are always happy to assist.
At number 6 is Playable Shadow in the Generations Remaster and Super Shadow in Shadow Generations. Despite the mouthful that was, this one's pretty self-explanatory. Play as Shadow the Hedgehog in the base Generations, which sounds like an existing mod you can use for the current PC version, and there is, complete with his motorcycle, the Dark Rider. Yes, I'm heavily implying that it needs to come back because it hasn't been in a mainline game since Sonic 06, and that upsets me. Now Knuckles be out here stealing his thunder, so there better be a motorcycle showdown in Sonic Movie 3. Oh, it's real. And it's part of a Lego set. I have it, it's pretty sweet. And the commercial for it is way funnier than it had any right to be. It's also a huge part of the newly announced Fearless Year of Shadow campaign, where they made a real-life version of the motorcycle, and may or may not have confirmed Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing as canon, which means Banjo-Kazooie could be canon, and that is so wild to me. Anyways, I'd imagine Shadow in the base generations would work just the same as he did in Forces. Once you finish Episode Shadow, or in this case, Shadow Generations, and complete certain modern Sonic stages in the main campaign, Shadow becomes playable in those stages, though he's not playable in tag team or boss stages, which is kind of a shame because we could have had an infinite boss with Shadow, but it is what it is, a game with so much missed potential. So I wouldn't go expecting Shadow vs Perfect Chaos anytime soon, despite how cool that sounds. And if there's a Shadow skin, then there might as well be some for the other characters too. However, what we can expect, and that's assuming the Chaos Emeralds will be part of Shadow's story, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't, since they were needed to beat Black Doom to begin with, and it's how Shadow's able to perform all his Chaos moves, which probably unlock after finding each Emerald, and you definitely know where I'm going with this.
Where's that fourth Chaos Emerald?
Ultimately resulting in Super Shadow during the final confrontation with Black Doom, but this time with the spectacle of a Titan fights in Frontiers. Now, Super Shadow possibly appearing is actually a pretty big deal in the community, because the last time Shadow did so was in Sonic 06, which was also the first and last time Silver did in a mainline game, though Super Silver appeared in the IDW comics, which are canon, and outside Sonic Rush Adventure in 2007, which featured Burning Blaze, and also returned in the IDW comics. It was the last time any character outside of Sonic had a super form in the games until Superstars, specifically the new character Trip, who turns into a dang dragon. Are you kidding me? This is awesome! Trip deserves to be part of the modern games too, just saying. Overall, Super Shadow's inclusion is going to be pure hype. Even more so if they actually implement Shadow's inhibitor rings into both forms of gameplay, which, to my knowledge, has not been done before, and has only existed in Sonic X, an 06 cutscene, and some Archie comics to demonstrate how much stronger Shadow is without them, at the risk of exhaustion. But speaking of supers, let's move on to number 7, Supersonic bosses in the base generations. Most of you who've played Generations already know that Supersonic is playable once you beat the game, giving you another way to play through the stages, but mostly breaking them. It is a nice reward though, but I would prefer if it stayed as an epic boss showdown event, though recently it occurred to me that in every version of the Perfect Chaos battle, whether that's Sonic X or the original Sonic Adventure, it's always been Supersonic to take him down. In Generations though, it's not needed. Now there's been a debate about this choice for many years, and I'm just gonna simply chalk it up to Sonic getting stronger since Adventure and knowing the trick to defeating Chaos this time. Plus, we gotta consider bosses are not the same as they were in their original games, since there's mechanics and attacks that were simply not present in each. Heck, Silver and the Egg Dragoon were completely changed altogether to accompany an entirely brand new playstyle. And let's be honest, there was no way we were getting the Hedgehog in Generations. Especially not after the reception in Unleashed. And it's pretty shocking that people are now saying the Hedgehog is good. Where were you guys in 2008? So yeah, Perfect Chaos is no different, but simply having the option to use Supersonic during any boss after finishing the story is just a nice little bonus for people to play around with that not only breaks the trend, but has absolutely no bearing on the story. Just picture it as one of those cheat codes from the PS1 or PS2 era that changes the look of your character, though it's one that'll definitely keep feeding the demand for adventure remakes. At number 8, and since we're on the topic of bosses, it's Fixing the Time Eater. A lot of people consider this the worst boss in not just Generations, but the entire Sonic franchise. Now, I haven't personally touched this boss in years because I simply lack the ability and the proper hardware to play it. But from what I remember, it was kind of finicky when transitioning between 2D and 3D. Not to mention the Time Eater is everyone's favorite piñata.
Looks like a homing shot. He's something that knocks like a homing shot. He's something that knocks like a homing shot.
Yep, this part got very annoying. So we're all hoping it can be toned down in the remaster. Heck, once again, the modders got to work and removed all the side character voices during this fight. And even made Sonic's team attack useful? Yeah, to be honest, I still don't know how it's useful outside of clearing debris, but hey, credit where credit's due. Either way, this would probably be the team's biggest issue when it comes to remastering this game. At number 9 is the inclusion of two fan-favorite abilities, the drop dash for classic Sonic and the bounce jump for modern Sonic. Ever since Sonic Mania introduced the drop dash, it's easily become one of the best and fastest ways to get around in any game since, with Frontiers adapting it into a 3D setting quite well. And while I'd love to see the drop dash used by both Sonics, I highly think it'll be restricted to just classic Sonic, though I can see modern Sonic getting the bounce jump or the jump stomp from Frontiers, which allows you to gain extra height by holding the respective button while in the air. Both moves would fit right into the game because there's plenty of situations that would call for their use. And finally at number 10, and it's probably the most controversial idea, but here goes. The Sonic Superstars physics in place of the classic Sonic physics in Generations.
I represent the angry mob.
Hello!
Have you seen this supervillain?
Do not get me wrong, I think Generations classic Sonic plays perfectly fine, but I don't think we can debate that both Mania and Superstars feel so much better in comparison. Like, it's not even a contest. They're both far smoother and far more functional than classic Sonic's physics enforces. And this is coming from someone who enjoys Superstars more than Mania, despite the outrageously difficult bosses. I fully understand both sides of a conversation when it comes to this idea. One side wants the physics to remain untouched and as respectful to the original as possible, and that's fair. Meanwhile, the other side thinks this is a great idea and fulfills the purpose of what a remaster should be doing, that being to make things better than they were originally. Personally, I fall into both camps, but heavily lean on the latter. As long as we have a toggle in the options menu for original and Superstars physics, we are good to go. But given we're talking about importing physics and features from another game that's built on a completely different engine, and the same thing applies to some of the other things I've brought up on this list, the chances any of this stuff will be done in either game remains to be seen, so we just gotta wait. In the meantime, that's going to do it for this video, but I want to know what are some of the improvements and features you would like to see in Sonic and Shadow Generations. Be sure to leave everything down in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell for more Sonic content. As always, I've been Blue Knight, thank you so much for watching and for the constant support, I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you guys back here next time.